In a world where the frontier was as wild as the hearts that lived upon it, one woman's act of mercy would change the course of her life forever. This is Heart of the Guardians, where every tale of love, courage, and redemption beats with the spirit of the Old West. Now, let's begin. The sun was sinking low beyond the jagged mesas, painting the land in hues of crimson and gold. The wind carried the faint cry of coyotes, and somewhere in the distance, the echo of hooves thundered faintly across the dry earth. Mary Whitlock stood by the window of her small cabin, her fingers tight around the rifle she held close to her chest. The prairie was quiet, too quiet. Since her husband's death 2 winters ago, silence had been her most constant companion. She had learned to live with it, to breathe through the loneliness that filled her nights. But on this evening, the silence carried weight, like a warning. Her heart jumped when she heard it, a sound, faint but certain, a horse stumbling near her barn. She lifted her rifle, stepped to the door, and slowly pushed it open. The fading light revealed a dark figure slumped near the fence. His horse, wounded and trembling, stood beside him. The man wasn't white, his skin bronze, his long dark hair tangled and matted with blood. An Apache. Mary froze. Every story she'd ever heard from the settlers, about raids, fires, and killings, rushed through her mind. Instinct told her to run back inside and bolt the door. But as she took a closer look, she saw the crimson stain spreading across his side. He was bleeding, badly. He was dying. She swallowed hard. God help me, she whispered and set her rifle down. The stranger was heavy, but Mary managed to drag him inside, laying him near the fire. His breath came ragged, his eyes half open, murmuring words in a language she didn't understand. She heated water, cleaned his wound as best she could, and stitched it closed with trembling hands. It wasn't mercy that guided her fingers, it was something deeper. Maybe loneliness, maybe compassion, maybe both. For 2 days, he drifted between life and death. Mary stayed by his side, feeding him water and broth when he stirred. On the 3rd morning, when she entered the room, she found his dark eyes open and fixed on her. He spoke, his voice rough and low. "Why you help me?" Mary froze, unsure what to say. "Because you were dying," she finally answered. He studied her silently, then turned his gaze to the fire. "You white woman, no afraid." Mary looked at him for a long moment. "I was, still am, but fear won't heal anyone." He gave a faint smile, a strange one, almost bitter. "You different." She didn't know what to say to that, so she turned away, busying herself with the kettle. Days passed. The Apache's strength returned slowly. He told her his name, Tahoma, meaning, snow on the mountains. He spoke little of his tribe or what had happened, but Mary pieced together fragments. His band had been ambushed by soldiers. He was the only one who escaped, wounded and hunted. At night, Mary often caught him staring into the fire, his jaw tight, eyes full of memories he'd never speak of. Despite her fear, a strange bond began to grow between them, quiet, unspoken, but real. He helped with the chores when he was able, chopping wood, fixing the corral, even repairing her leaky roof. One morning, she found him outside, tending to the grave near the oak tree. Her husband's grave. "You husband?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she said. "He was killed by outlaws 2 winters ago." Tahoma bowed his head. "You alone since then?" "Yes." He looked up at her. "Alone is hard, even for strong one." Mary's throat tightened. "I manage." He nodded. "You strong woman." The words caught her off guard. She wasn't used to being called strong. Mostly, she was just surviving. But the fragile peace they had built shattered one night when a group of soldiers rode in. Mary woke to the pounding of hooves, the glow of lanterns through her window, and the heavy knock at her door. "Ma'am," the officer said, his tone sharp. "We're tracking a fugitive Apache. Have you seen anyone?" Mary's mind raced. Tahoma was in the barn. If they found him, they'd kill him on sight. She forced herself to stay calm. No, she said, no one's been here for weeks. The officer studied her face, suspicious. If you're lying, ma'am, it'll be your neck too. She nodded stiffly. I understand. They searched the area but found nothing. Mary had hidden Tahoma beneath the floorboards of the old storm cellar. When the soldiers finally rode away, she rushed to lift the hatch. Tahoma crawled out, covered in dust, his eyes fierce with emotion. You saved me again, he said. Mary took a shaky breath. You'd have done the same. He shook his head. No, my people say, debt must be paid. You owe me nothing, she said. He looked at her long and hard. You wrong. The next morning, he was gone. Mary stood by the window, staring at the empty barn. The strange stillness returned, colder now, lonelier. She tried to tell herself it was for the best. But that night, she dreamed of him, his dark eyes, the way he said her name. 3 weeks passed before he returned. She was chopping firewood when she saw him riding down the trail. He wasn't alone. Behind him, several Apache riders appeared, men with stern faces and silent eyes. Mary's stomach twisted with fear. Tahoma dismounted and walked toward her. Mary, he said softly, my people find me. I tell them about you. She glanced nervously at the others. What do they want? He hesitated. They think, you my wife. Her breath caught. What? They say I can't stay with white woman unless, marriage. She stepped back, heart pounding. Tahoma, I helped you, that's all. I can't. He looked at her, sorrow flickering in his eyes. If not marry, they take me away. Say I bring shame. She turned away, overwhelmed. This is madness. He lowered his head. I know force you, but know this, I stay only if you want. Mary stared at him for a long moment. He wasn't demanding, only waiting. And somewhere deep inside her, a quiet voice whispered what she didn't want to admit. She didn't want him to leave again. The ceremony was simple. Beneath the wide western sky, they stood before Tahoma's people. A blanket draped around their shoulders, a token of unity. No priest, no vows, just silence and the soft hum of the wind through the canyon. When the ceremony ended, she felt strange, not trapped, but changed. That night, they sat together by the fire. You don't have to stay, she whispered. He looked at her, his eyes soft. I stay because I choose. She smiled faintly. You don't belong here. He shook his head. Maybe here is where I belong now. Life was not easy for them. The settlers whispered, called her a traitor. Traders refused her business. Children pointed at her when she went to town. But through it all, Tahoma remained steady, silent, strong, protective. He built her a new corral, hunted for food, taught her to read the signs of the land. And slowly, the walls around her heart began to crumble. One evening, as the sunset bled over the horizon, he reached for her hand. You no more alone, he said. She looked at him, her throat tight. No, she whispered, not anymore. Months turned into years. The land healed around them, as did their hearts. But peace never lasted long in those days. One spring morning, a group of ranchers arrived, men who hated the idea of a white woman living with an Apache. They set fire to her barn, shouted curses, and threatened to hang Tahoma if he didn't leave. Mary stood in front of him, rifle in hand. You'll have to go through me first. The men hesitated, stunned by her defiance. Then Tahoma stepped forward, his voice calm but steady. You leave now. We want no trouble. For a tense moment, it seemed violence would explode. But something in his gaze made them step back. Maybe it was the quiet strength of a man who had seen too much death already. They left, but not without a warning. Mary lowered the rifle, shaking. They'll be back, she said. Tahoma nodded. Then we be ready. That night, under the starlit sky, they sat together in silence. Mary leaned against him, feeling the warmth of his heartbeat. You ever regret it? She asked softly. He shook his head. No regret. You saved my life, now I save yours. Again and again. She smiled through tears. You already did. He looked at her, his eyes glowing in the firelight. Love is not from tribe or blood. It from heart. Years later, when travelers passed through the valley, they would sometimes see smoke rising from a small cabin near the river. They'd hear stories of a white widow who had married an Apache warrior, of how they built a life between two worlds, against all odds. Some said it was a legend. Others swore it was true. But for those who ever stood near that quiet grave beneath the oak tree, marked with two names, side by side, they knew the truth. It wasn't a story about war or survival. It was a story about love, fierce, forbidden, and eternal. And that's the heart of this tale, of mercy that became love, of loneliness that found a home, of two souls who dared to defy the world. This is Heart of the Guardians, where every story remembers that even in the darkest corners of the past, love could still light the way.